On August the 15th, 2017, and this is the Cats Whiskers Podcast live. Hello and welcome to this evening's Cats Whiskers podcast. My name is Jono Bullard and I'm delighted to say with me round the virtual hockey table of chat are Paul Balm.
Hello.
Andy Haywood.
Good evening.
And Antoine Marie-Jeanne.
I do.
We've got a lot to fit in tonight. We're going to be looking at Panthers' final two signings and the complete squad. We're also going to be discussing the Supporters Trust latest news. We're going to quickly cover the games at the weekend and also which of the other Elite League squads either scare us or don't bother us in the slightest. But before all that, we will go back to later last week when two new signings were announced for the Nottingham Panthers. On Friday night, it was first announced that 6'3", 27-year-old defenceman Jan Sauvé was signed as the Panthers' final defensive signing. He was a second-round draft pick for the Vancouver Canucks in 2008 and iced for them 8 times, but spent most of his career in the EIHL, where he played 227 regular season games. He was with Medzkové Zagreb in the KHL, but his time there was cut short due to him having testicular cancer, but thankfully he beat that and signed for the Red Bull Munich in the DEL, helping them to a DEL championship last season. Now he finds himself coming to Nottingham, where he arrived earlier this week. We thought that was it, but then on Saturday, Panthers pulled a signing right out of left field as they announced the capture of Brett Pelini, son of former Panther Fred, who played for the club in the 1986-87 season. Due to Brett playing some of his junior career in Guildford, he actually counts as a British player. The 27-year-old has iced for 272 games in the EIHL, scoring 146 points. So, after a month with no signings, two come along all at once. So, we're going to discuss both. We'll start with Jan Sauvé. So, Andy, I'll start with you. You know, he looks an absolute stud of a defenceman.
He really does. I went on when I saw that he'd beaten testicular cancer, I went online and tried to read up a bit about him, and I found a couple of sort of blogs that were sort of Vancouver related, but I don't think they were sort of like Canucks forums, as it were. But there was a post on there that I read that was whatever happened to Jan Sauvé, and there was talk about the fact that he looked like he could have had a decent career, but he was in a car crash, and he got called up to training camp and was in a car crash which concussed him. And obviously then he never, by all accounts, he never really got the chance again to sort of prove his worth in the NHL. So that's a terrible shame. But you know, he looks like he's got fantastic pedigree still. If I'm right, I think pretty certain that I've read that he won the East Coast's hardest slapshot competition in the skills competition in 2013, perhaps 2014, and it still hasn't been beaten by anyone since. So he's, hopefully he should be able to put a couple of pucks in the net this year, because I think they reckon it was about 95 miles per hour. I think it was 94 miles per hour. So he's obviously got one hell of a shot on him. And like I say, the teams of the leagues he's played with, he looks like he's no mug, defensively. So I think it could be a really good signing for us, and I'm mightily impressed.
I mean, Paul, a lot of people were expecting Guy Lepine to be the final defensive signing. It's not worked out that way, but any disappointment that there would have been over not having Lepine back was quickly exacerbated by signing such a good player.
Well, Yeah, I mean, I was one of the people who expected Lepine back, mainly Jono, because you told him told me you'd already signed him. But I mean, Sauvé looks, he's looks like could be as good as Lepine, maybe even better. And I hope people give him the chance. I hope this, because there was a lot of want Guy Lepine. We haven't got Guy Lepine. We've got somebody different. So don't necessarily go comparing him and saying, "Oh, he's not Guy Lepine." No, he's not. He's Yann Sauvé, and that's he's a different person. He's a different player. We've got to get over the fact that Lepine, for whatever reason, if we were looking at him, didn't sign, and get on with who did.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts?
Really, really happy, really excited. Like I say, like Andy and everybody's already said, he's got a good pedigree. I think the shot itself is a weapon that we can use, even if he doesn't score. Look to pick up the rebounds, because I can't see many goalies holding a shot of that power if he's still got it. And also, just for him to be here so quickly as well, unless this has been in the works a while. I mean, I understand obviously he was in Germany at the back end of last season, so maybe his visa covers an extended period. I don't know, but it's fantastic news, and it gives him extra time to bed into the team as well. And I think looking at the squad overall, it balances off nicely.
I think that's the thing. You mentioned about how he's got in so quickly. He was signed on Friday. He arrived at Panthers today, I believe, this morning. That's very, very quick. There is no way that if he was signed on Friday that his visa would have been sorted out. So it's like you say, there's a lot of speculation about whether he's here just on a 3-month visa, whether he's actually got a European stamp in his passport, or, like you say, and it's something I've not thought of, Ant, is could his visa actually have carried over from when he was in Germany? Any thoughts on that?
I ain't got a clue. Asking us how to work out the visa process is probably like asking us to do a decent meeting in a pub on a Monday night.
Hey, I can do that.
I think also as well, there is a possibility. It might be the shortest possibility out of all of them, that we might have signed him before it was announced. Whether it's a case of I'm just thinking of because of all the chatter about the players that we have signed that's still on here, whether they were holding this one back because they thought it might take longer, or it might hit a snag potentially, so they thought, well, we won't announce it until we know that he's on his way or he's ready to come across.
I think you make a very, very good point there, Andy. But the thing is, it was over a month from the last signing to this one, and I just think if they had news before that, they would have released it, because everybody was clamouring for news of that final signing, and especially with Neil Black's famous "everybody will be here by the 7th of August" claim. It just seems to me that I'm not so sure that he was signed prior to Friday. Maybe very, very close to. I suppose we will find out in 3 months' time if he's still here, I suppose. But what a great player to have in the team. I mean, I don't think anybody would have expected us to get a current DEL champion into the side.
No, not at all. No. I completely agree.
Okay, that wasn't the end of the signing. We all thought it was. But on Saturday morning, like you said, Panthers announced the signing of Brett Pelini. As I've already said, son of former Panther Fred Pelini. I mean, Andy, you've seen Fred Pelini's points totals from when he was at the Panthers, and you said that Brett's got a lot to live up to there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, if he doesn't put up 4 points a game, then you ask him some serious questions about his dedication, his talent. No, I mean, Jesus. I think he's still, according to Elite Prospects, and I know that there's a few things that are slightly out on Elite Prospects at times, but I think he's still by far our leader in points per game. I think it was, when I looked, I think it was something like 4.2 2-something points per game, which is just obscene. And it was, I don't want to make anyone feel old, but it was before I was born, so obviously I can't really comment on the standard or anything like that as such, but, he must have been quite something to watch.
Well, let's bring in Mr. Balm, because
I knew you'd do this.
Because me and you are very much old enough to remember Fred Pellini. Definitely. I mean, what a player! He just scored for fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, there were, it was different times, and it was, the hockey then was a very, in a lot of ways, a very different game, and 4 points a game wasn't. I remember we cut an import because he was only on like 2 or 3 points a game. You think about it now, it's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, if he plays like his dad, that sort of all out, sort of a big, that big sort of power forward, then there'll be a lot of happy people in Nottingham, and the real bonus, the real thing that we'll have had a lot of the other teams gnashing their teeth, perhaps, is the fact that he's a Brit. He's a proper import level Brit, and we talk time and time again about Cardiff, how Cardiff have got bounds. It gives them an extra import. Well, Pellini is a very similar, so it brings that as well. We've got an import for the price of a Brit, as it were.
I am surprised at this signing, because I must admit there was no inkling of it, and the other thing it does give us is extra depth.
It's fantastic. I mean, I know we've talked in the past about where are your next Myers coming from, where's your next Clark coming from, and I don't get me wrong, I don't think you'll ever replace a David Clark. You can't replace a David Clark. His just goal scoring record is phenomenal. But if you look at this kid's points that he's racked up in his previous spells and what have you, this guy is a serious contender for a top 2 spot for me, a top second line player. That is only a good thing, because then we're not, if Clark gets injured, I really hope he doesn't, but the last few seasons, we all know what's happened. Then we've got somebody that can that'll be that sort of higher line player straight away. And the other thing I think it does as well is put a little bit more pressure on the likes of Farmer, Lakovic, to up their game even more, because look at the competition for places now. It's just brilliant. I mean, I was buzzing when we announced that. I looked on his stats, and unfortunately, I got mixed up with the lad that's playing at Arizona. I was like, bloody hell!
Of course,
a very excited moment, and then was told to calm down.
Yeah. But, let's face it. As his brother Brendan, of course, was playing for the Arizona Phoenix last season. I don't think we're going to get a player straight out of the NHL.
If I'm right, I think he'd class as a Brit as well, because I'm sure he came up through the same system as Brett. So never, don't close the doors yet. But yeah,
I think it'll be a while. But yes, it is a great signing. But I think for me it's the depth it gives us as well, and it also. Another thing that I haven't really seen be discussed is, I think it shows that we are making a real go of it this season to have some success domestically. I think the club has probably looked at how poor we was last year, and I think we've signed a roster that, on paper at least, should certainly be challenging right up there till the end of the season. I mean, how do you guys feel about that, Andy?
Yeah, it certainly looks and feels like a team that's been put together with some serious thought, and to be fair, a team that looks like it's been put together with some serious money. They've made no bones about the fact that we're in the CHL, and whether it's sort of paper talk to sort of motivate fans or the players themselves. The thing that was released with the video of Neil Black said that they wanted to get out of the group stages. So they were always going to be signing players of a certain quality. Now, the interesting thing, and we've spoke about it before, I don't know if it's made a podcast or not, or whether it was just sort of in-house, was that there was a spell where everyone was really sort of, not necessarily disinterested, but there was no sort of enamour with the team. And then there was a couple of signings, I think it was Phillips and Schaller, and all of a sudden the makeup of the team just seemed to click. It had gone from a team that seemed, pretty, not necessarily average, but it didn't really excite or sort of whet the appetite, so to speak, to being what looks like an incredibly well-balanced team, as you say, on paper. Now, obviously, we've got to put that into practice and get results on the ice. But it's the first season in quite a few years where I've been really quite excited and looking forward to the new season. And I'm really excited to see just how far this team can go, because, like I say, currently on paper, it looks like it could be a really strong contender.
Yeah, and I think I'd agree with that entirely. I mean, Paul, you are known for your extreme confidence at times, but even
I'm packing up if you keep having a go at me.
But this roster must excite you.
Nothing excites me anymore. Come on, we know that. But yeah, I mean, I think going back to what Andy said, it's almost built from the back. It's been like making a cake. I'm gone. You make the cake, so we got that's the main bit. And then people like Delago, Sorve, they're the icing almost. So you've got the sort of the plain Victoria sponge, and then the extra players are that bit that sort of makes it more exciting. Mm-hmm. And Pauline is the cherry on top, isn't he? Just to complete the cake analogy.
Is Bake Off back or something?
Channel 4. I mean, your view on the overall squad. How do you feel about it?
Again, Andy brought it up. The one thing I look at this squad is balance. I think we've got players that can, are goal scorers. We've got players that are creators. We've got players that are grinders. I think the one thing we had too much of last year was grinders. We didn't really have that sort of flair, or we mentioned in the past a Beauregard-like player who's just going to, he's going to score important goals based on resumes and what have you. Obviously, you don't know until you actually see the whole team in action. This squad that we've built this season, I'm really excited to see get going. And I know you've got the option of the 3 under-23s as well, but based on what I know, we'll come on to it later, but based on what people have been telling me from the weekend, the likes of Kelsall, Tetlow look like they could command a roster spot straight away. I mean, it's just, I've not been this pumped or excited for a season in a long time.
Me neither.
I've got this real sort of buzz about it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna. I would put Cardiff as my favourites for the league, but I'd like to see and I'd like to think that with the squad that we've built, we're going to give them a damn good go. And that's all we ask for. Is at the end of the day, that's all we ask for is a sustained, challenge. Let's not fall off in November. And I think with a bit of luck, as long as the injury curse doesn't keep happening. Well, what a time to be a Panther potentially.
Just very quickly, on the face of it, all things considered, the fact that we've not seen him play, the fact we've not seen anybody else play really yet, would you say that Perlini is the biggest signing of the off-season?
No. I would think Garnett or Delago would actually be bigger signings than Perlini.
Really,
I get where Andy's coming from.
The weight of him being a Brit, I think, just
I think it's a massive signing. Don't get me wrong, and I think the fact he's a Brit makes it a huge signing. But the other thing I think of is, what would the reaction have been if we'd have signed him as purely as an import? I mean, I pulled his stats out. He's got 272 games in the ECHL and scored 146 points. So he's at about 0.6 points a game. We've had Delago come in, and he's at a point a game in the ECHL. You've got Garnett, who's played several seasons in the KHL. So I think if he came in as an import, I think there'd have been quite a negative reaction to it. I agree with you that because he's a Brit, that makes it a massive signing. However, I still think that Delago and Garnett are bigger signings overall in the context of this Panthers team.
I think in a way it's difficult to compare the two because he is a Brit. So in terms and because he is a Brit, that it makes it a much bigger sign. But I get where Andy's coming from. You know, this could be really big, but I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I can imagine that there was 11 other teams, Guildford especially. I would have thought, because obviously that's where he originated. That's where he started his career. But I can imagine 11 other teams just went, oh, what have they done?
And that's why I would say that it is. It's very much a case of, like the year I said that us losing Matthew Myers to Cardiff was bigger than Sheffield losing Forney to Belfast.
Yeah.
Was very much a case of, because it's a British player and it's a top-end British player, they're so much more valuable. Obviously, the Myers situation was very much a case of it was making us considerably weaker whilst making Cardiff considerably stronger. Now, obviously, I know we don't have that scenario in this case because he's not been in the league before. But I just think your exact thoughts around the 11 other clubs sort of sighing at the announcement that we'd signed him as a Brit. I just think that in its own right sort of elevates it as being, because realistically, I mean, Farmer and Clark are top end Brits. There's an argument that Lee and Lakovic are probably second tier, maybe third tier Brits now in some quarters. Perlini, realistically, although no one's seen him, you would say is a top end Brit.
He should be a top tier Brit. He should be O'Connor, Dowd, Clark, Richardson level, probably beyond.
And what it gives us beyond, and this is different to almost any other team in this league, is we've now got a Brit pack that are competing for places.
Yeah,
they're not just there by default. Almost, it's probably not the right phrase, but there is this. It's that extra competition, and that can only be good.
What do you think? Get in touch with us on Twitter at CatsWhiskers.TV. What do you think of the squad? What do you think of the two signings? Do you agree with Andy? Do you think Perlini is the biggest signing that we've had? Plenty of you listening online at the minute. We've had a few tweets in already. Ghost of Electricity, he says, "Sweet Jesus, it's a great roster."
Nice name.
Yeah, Ghost of Electricity. I'm very impressed with the organisation for getting so many talented young guys. And that's an important point, and this is something I want to bring out. I know we're going to bring in the other Elite League teams later, but compared to our conference rivals, our average age is 3 years younger than Sheffield, than Cardiff, and 5 years younger than Belfast on average. We also
Belfast will win the league. Salford will have reached retirement age by February.
And also the squad depth, 25 players in the squad. Now I know that 5 of those are under 23 Brits, and your likes of Joe Hazeldine, Josh Tetlow, and Jordan Kelsall are all on 2-way deals, so they won't be icing every game. But that is a massive amount of depth. And I saw a tweet from Adam Goodridge last week, just as training camp was starting, and he was like, I think he put something like 5 years ago we had 15, 16 players, and that was the squad. So now we've got 25. He says what a difference it makes. And
makes his job harder.
It certainly does make his job harder. But you look at Cardiff, their squad is 24 players. Sheffield's is just looking at 23 players. So there's some big squads out there, and it's a different game. I mean, I think you're going to find that most teams are going to be playing 4-line hockey.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where you can see this under 23 rule coming to fruition. The teams are having to look to bring extra, these extra players in ones they might not have brought through, otherwise. So that, again, it can only be for the good of the game.
Yeah, and Kenwyn Jones, a regular contributor to the show, he says, having seen two-thirds of your roster compete with the Devils, how excited are you to see the full deal? Friendly apart, he says, newfound confidence. So I think we probably pretty much answered that by saying how much we're looking forward to seeing this squad. But let's think about the ones that we saw. I mean, Andy, you was there, Paul, you was there, I was there on Saturday night. Who impressed you?
For me, I know we're going to probably talk about him later on in another segment, but I was very impressed with Josh Tetlow.
Yeah, and I think I was very impressed with Tetlow and also Kelsall. I thought they both were seamless the way they fitted in. You wouldn't have known that was their first game at this level. Not in the slightest. I thought they were both absolutely superb.
I mean, Tetlow is absolutely humongous.
He's a big lad, isn't he?
he really is tall. I mean, it's one of them things. He looks. Obviously, he's very, very tall, but he looks quite thin, and quite slender with his height. But I noticed throughout the game that very minimal effort in throwing hits, and bodies were flying everywhere. And it's purely because of his size. He's a really big guy, and he looks like he could be a fantastic addition to the defence. I think out of the new imports, I was really quite impressed with Brisebois. I thought he looked pretty steady. He took a shot to the leg or ankle, blocked a shot which obviously hurt him, but he carried on for the rest of the game. But I thought he looked quite assured on the puck and pretty steady at the back. So yeah, I mean, bizarrely, it's not very often that I'd pick two defensemen as my standouts, but yeah, those two would be my sort of ones to watch for this weekend.
Yeah, Paul, who stood out for you?
I thought Lindhagen had a good game.
Yeah.
Which I don't often say, and I think it's always difficult sort of picking people on that first game. I think maybe Phillips and Schaller had fairly quiet games, and then I thought that on the night. Then watching the highlights, the pass from Schaller to Farmer
was outstanding.
For the goal was absolutely superb. Yeah, it was, it's the sort of pass that you expect teams to be making in sort of February, March time, not the middle of August.
Thoughts on Cardiff?
I thought they looked like a team that have improved from last year, but they did look like you could tell which team had been together, or the majority of the team had been together for over a year, and which one had been together for a week.
Exactly.
Some of their set plays. I mean, the first period and the two power play goals particularly.
Oh, absolutely.
Their power plays looked well polished, and it was the first pre-season game of the season, and the power play looked incredibly well polished. So I thought Paris looked a fantastic addition. I think he looks very good. And you know what as we've seen with Dundee, you know what you're going to get with Justin Farina. and I think he's a very good player as well. So I think they've upgraded. I think that they've obviously kept a vast majority of their team, so they're already gelled, as it were. And I think they'll make a strong start to the season.
Yes, I would agree.
One thing I'd say though is that obviously, we're talking about the Saturday night 'cause none of us saw the Sunday, but at the end of the day, we were 1-1, 5-on-5.
Yeah,
across the game. And we're talking about how disjointed we look compared to them. It was only when they got having the man advantage that where they made it tell.
Just on like you say, none of us were there on Sunday, but on Sunday it was a very good result. Sam Gospel started in net for Panthers, and there seems to be a problem with Zarchenko coming in. He's still not got his visa cleared. However, I think we can have a lot of confidence in Sam Gospel by the performance he put in on Sunday night. He got the man of the match. He kept the Devils to 2 goals. I mean, and we've seen Gospel against us in that game we want to forget against Sheffield from the Challenge Cup, but he looks an absolute real deal quality netminder.
He does, and he's young and he's got plenty of time to learn. What a nice position for GB to be in, knowing that you've got the likes of the players that they've got coming through. Tom Murdy, who had an excellent game on Saturday night. He was absolutely superb. Exactly. I mean, that's a great advert. I know the friendlies, but probably the ones that can't take any time off are your netties. So yeah, it's a really nice position to be in. I mean, I've been lucky enough to see Gospel play a couple of times for Telford as well. Again, looks solid, and that's all you can ask for. And I think he'd be hoping that this is a step up for him. Obviously, going from a starter, or I know he shared the duties at Telford, but is he coming as a backup, or does he want to push on? I know. There's various things about that. Garnett obviously coming towards the end of his career. Could we see a bit more of Gospel this year than we thought? Possibly, and I'd be quite happy with that.
Well, the thing is, I think Zarchenko has been signed with that in mind, with Mike Garnett, and I don't think Garnett at 35, 36, whatever age he is, could probably last a 70-game season, but you probably look at him to do at least 40. And I think that's why the idea of having Zarchenko there was to fill in that void. With having 15 imports, you have one of the import netminders starting and Sam Gospel on the bench. But it looks like that if Sam Gospel is needed to come in, if he's needed to come in mid-game, if he is needed to probably start a game, you can rely on him to do it.
I think the big thing that he's got in his favour is he's coming off the back of a season of playing hockey, and I think that's huge for backup netminders. We've seen in the past, I'm trying to think. I think pretty much, is it every season in the Elite League we've had Woolley or Dan Green, and obviously
we had Mark Hartley one season.
Oh, okay. I forgot about Mark Hartley. Was he here for a full season?
Yes.
Ah, cool. But obviously they're players that they were backup netminders sort of for their career, and obviously Gospel's young enough and was talented enough that he was able to say, you know what, I couldn't give this a good go, so I'm going to go down to the league below and I'm going to push to be a starting netminder. And we could be seeing the start of the next Stevie Lyle, the next Stephen Murphy, the next Ben Bounds, and he's certainly, on the face of it at the moment, he's certainly got the talent, and I think we are in an incredibly lucky position to obviously have him, but also the resume that Garnett's got. I think there's no doubt that he will be the first choice netminder for the Nottingham Panthers this year. And obviously, if and when he gets here, Zakharchenko looks like he will do a damn good job. He's certainly an upgrade on all the other sort of second import netminders that we've had. So, Martin Wrightums, Modig, Passel, Conway. He certainly looks a step up over all of them. So, I think it's a very good position that we're in, netminder-wise.
Mm. And I think that's going back to what I was saying about the depth of the squad. We have depth in all areas. Currently looking at it, we have 3 netminders, 8 defencemen, and 14 forwards. And that obviously that is counting the under 23 guys, but that is some position to be
in. Oh yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing we've been calling for, for a few years. We know the club's making money. It looks like they're spending it. But one thing I wanted to say about Gospel as well is what a position he's in now. Being able to play with somebody like with the experience that Garnett's got. Mm. He's going to learn loads from him. You would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think again it goes back to what we were saying, how all of us have got a confidence, a spring in our step. We're excited about this season because because of this roster that has been signed, and it's like you said, we are very much looking forward to this season. And I know some seasons you do feel like, it's a chore, we're going again, it becomes a habit. It's not felt like that coming into this season. It's actually, I want to go and I want to see this team play. And I think the majority of this fan base feels that way.
Give it a month. And then we'll have a bingo on who's the first player to get called out for he's not good enough, he doesn't do nothing, blah blah blah. We even had that. Remember, we even had that during the Grand Slam team.
Yeah, Andy's still got the text.
I've still got the text message with my parents. That was the worst bunch of imports I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden we won the league.
Yeah. It shows how much we know, really, doesn't it?
It really does. Why do you listen?
Okay, we shall move on. We should come back to the Panthers team compared to the other Elite League teams a little later. But first, something else that happened over the weekend, and you'll have heard us talk about the Supporters Trust over the past few months. They released a statement on Friday saying that they are having to change their name to the Nottingham Ice Hockey Supporters Trust due to a legal challenge from the Panthers themselves. They do have a new Twitter account. It is at Nottingham, or Nottingham, NOTTMIHST, and their new website is NIHST.org. They will be releasing membership details this week, so keep an eye on their social media, and they've also announced today a link with the Nottingham Lions as part of their membership pack. But going back to the statement on Friday, and I know that of the assembled crew that we have here tonight, there's people that are in favour and not in favour of the Supporters Trust, so it should lead to quite a lively debate. But Paul, what did you make of the statement when you saw it?
I think it's all a bit embarrassing on the Panthers' part, to be honest. I think it's short-sighted. I think you could almost call it petty. I mean, you can say what's in a name, and it could be worse. The Leeds United Supporters Trust appear to labour under the acronym LUST, which I'm not entirely sure is the way I'd want to go. But I mean, what was it? This is out of all of the clubs that's Supporters Direct have dealt with. This is the first time this has happened.
Yeah, I know, over 200 clubs.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad to me, really, but I think this was something that was in the actual statement itself, was that what it does show in a way is the need to have a supporters trust, because obviously there is something broken between the team and the fans.
I mean, Andy, you've not been in favour of the supporters trust. I think that's fair to say. So, what did you make of it all?
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised at all. That is anyone actually shocked that the Panthers have done that?
No, personally, no.
Yeah, whether you're for it or against it, it's not a shocking piece of news, is it? I appreciate that their view is that they will want to protect their own image, their branding. Sorry, obviously what they've done isn't really protecting their image, I suppose. But they will want to protect their brand. They will see it as, it's anti-establishment. It's all negative. They will see it as, why do we need a supporters trust anyway? I still, despite listening to various bits and bobs and reading everything and stuff like that, still don't really understand what it is, why we need it. But that's my own opinion. I just think that from a Panthers point of view, petty, yes, but unsurprising. And they, like I say, they will want to protect their brand. They will see it as a slight on them. My own personal opinion is I just don't really get it. I don't really understand the need or the reasons or anything like that. But like I say, purely from a Panthers point of view, they will see this as a dig at the management, as a dig at the coaching staff or the owner or stuff like that. Particularly on the back of the fact that it was set up, last season when, it was, let's be honest, everything was far from rosy. It was, the cries from forums and social media was, this guy out, that guy out, get rid of him, and they will see it as, and there's part of me as well that I think that kind of attitude is another reason why we've perhaps seemed to have signed the players that we've signed this year, almost like to prove a point, as much as it's what we should be doing anyway. It's very much of a case of, like you mentioned earlier on, Jono, because last season was so poor, they're really making a statement this year. And I think, for me, we've been terrible with a lot of things over the past, and obviously, let's be brutally honest, ourselves know it better than most with regards, the lack of sort of insight or anything to do with the team. But I just think, like I say, from my own personal opinion, I just don't really understand it. I don't really get why it's there or why it's needed.
I was disappointed in the Panthers more than anything. Like Andy said, obviously they want to protect their own brand, but I think this was a real chance for the club to sort of think, a bit of outside box thinking, to use a modern management term.
Low hanging fruit, I think.
Yeah, that sort of. It's like, historically, from what I know from when I've started watching over the last 10, 11, 12 years, whatever it is, the Panthers have always been, although the main thing I care about is going to the games, enjoying myself and watching a winning team, and a team that competes. It's nice to have that acknowledgement from the club. I mean, I remember the days where the players used to come into the T&D bar after the game, for instance. I mean, I can't remember the last time that happened. I remember, who was that French Canadian that wasn't very good, but he brought the Challenge Cup trophy into the bar and everybody was having the pictures with the trophy and stuff. To do that now, you have to pay for it.
What are you doing? They were all in the legend after we won the Challenge Cup.
Okay.
With Jansen and stuff like that.
Okay, I'd stand corrected. Thanks. But it's things like that. It was like I say, it was a real chance for the club to actually think that, to look at its fan base. And I understand there's various things that have happened in the past, like the offer from people to manage the website, the offer from people to do the scoreboard, that sort of thing. And it's always been turned away because the Panthers want to do everything themselves. Part of me, I can understand it because they, it's that trust thing. The people that you employ, you trust them to do and provide, and the skill set they've got. I think the stance they took was disappointing. And just to touch on what Andy said about the trust being set up, yes, it was a bad season, but my understanding is the idea actually came out before the season started last year, when it was first mooted. My only hope is from the future now, and it's great to hear about the news about the Lions, but my only hope is, and I've seen a few posts about this already, is that people don't now join the trust as a protest movement, because that's, from all the gumph and everything that was sent out about it, it was never about being a protest movement. It was an option. It was an attempt for a group of fans to actively work with the club and see what they could do from a fan basis. Get that interaction going, get the feedback going. And I'm really starting to worry now that because of this legal challenge, which has upset a lot of people by the looks of it, and there's more and more people sort of going, oh yeah, send me the details now, we want to stick it up and that sort of thing. That I'm not interested in that. I want a supporters trust to be like it was, the vision that was set out. So we'll see what the future brings. But like at the end of it, I was just really, really disappointed by the Panthers.
Yeah, and I think that's similar for me. I mean, I've not been involved with the supporters trust, but I went to a couple of the meetings and I've listened to them. I've seen all the leaflets and what they're about, and it was never about the team on the ice. It was never about on ice things. It was about making things better off ice. And like Andy says, we know that better than anybody where we've been in the past completely ignored by the club. And I don't think it would have hurt the club in any way just to meet them and listen to them and listen to what they had to say. What have they got to lose? And I just think it is very, very petty the way they've gone about it. But like you say, Anthony, you make a very, very good point that it's got to be very careful now that it doesn't become a protest movement. And I'm sure Rob will not allow that to happen. He will not want that to happen. But there will be people who will be joining up who will probably do so with that in mind, and that is absolutely the wrong reasons. It's completely against the ethos of why the trust was set up in the first place. And I understand why people are saying, why do we need a trust? We're a successful team. We win a lot of silverware. What do we need a trust for? There was a post by one of the Cage Forum moderators, Yotes, the other day, and it really struck a chord with me. And it was basically saying, you may not see a need for it now, but where will the club be in 5 or 10 years' time? What if Black sells the club to a proper, I won't use the word he used, but let's say crook? What if issues arise between the arena and the club? Having a fans group set up, particularly one that sits in a legal framework, which the trust does, as it is backed by Supporters Direct, which is backed by the government, then that would probably seem to be advantageous. And I think that is a massive, massive point. But the other thing I do want to point out is how much better the club has become in the last few months with engaging with fans, particularly through social media, and how much better our social media presence has become over the past few months. And I think that's down to Callum Chalmers, and I think he's done an absolutely fantastic job. Our social media was probably the worst in the league a year ago. Would you all agree with that?
Probably wouldn't say the worst, but I'd certainly put it down there. But you're right. I think there has been the odd hiccup. invariably. But I think Callum's been a breath of fresh air for the club, and you wanted that fan interaction. That's one way of doing it. That's
what the survey we did said, didn't it? One of the things that came out time and time again was that people wanted the fan interaction, and I think. And yeah, you're right. Well, what Callum's done has been fantastic. He's dragged us up there with the rest of the team. He needs to improve on his accuracy at times, but we're not all perfect. None of us are perfect. One thing, just going back to sports, just very, very briefly. One thing that did make me laugh, this whole thing is about the use of the name Nottingham Panthers. And how often do our shirts say Nottingham Panthers? How often are we actually the Nottingham Panthers? Well, we seem more often to be the GMB Panthers. So it's just quite. I just thought it was quite ironic, really, that that was the battleground they chose to fight on.
And I think this is another thing about when people say there's a need for the supporters' trust. Well, there's no need for it. But if you look at our fan survey, we had 700 plus responses to that.
Yes, easily, yeah.
So there's obviously people out there who care enough to give their opinions, and that's all that fan survey was an opinion, and we shared that with the club. We openly shared that with the club. They got that. They got all the results for that. So
and that's why when I did it, I didn't editorialise or anything. I just went, these are the figures. There's stuff that I could have said, but that I thought the figures actually spoke for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. But we will see what happens. Like you say, membership details will be released this week, possibly even tomorrow. So keep an eye on that Twitter at NOTTMIHST for the now Nottingham Ice Hockey Supporters Trust.
If anybody cares, it was Steve Peltier, the player I was trying to remember.
I can see
description then.
I can see why you forgot him. Blimey, I had until that moment. Right. We shall carry on, and we shall go on to the rest of the Elite League rosters. And I've been doing a little comparison spreadsheet over the past few weeks and how the rosters stack up by games played. But something I want to ask you guys, which of the rosters to you, apart from ours, stand out? And Paul, we'll start with you.
Cardiff. I think Cardiff will definitely be up there, and you can never count Sheffield out, but are they as good as last year? I don't know. They lost some players, they've gained some players. It's the thing, but to me, the one that really sort of stands out is Cardiff.
Yeah. Andy?
Well, there's 3 teams for me, and they're all in our conference, but they all stand out for slightly different reasons. I think Cardiff are, without a doubt, in my mind, the favourites. I think they had the best team in the league last year, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think they've improved in the areas where they've made new signings, and the players that they've kept are, they're not bad. So I certainly think Cardiff are the favourites. Touching on what Paul said there, Sheffield will be there or thereabouts, regardless. I'm pretty certain they could sign a team full of 16-year-olds and somehow they will be there or thereabouts. They just have that habit. And Belfast, I'm genuinely intrigued to see them this year with obviously the new coach and with what on paper is an incredibly ageing team. To see how they fare over the long haul of the season, because there's undoubted quality in there. And there's some, your spreadsheet, Jono, that you've released. There's an incredible amount of experience in my squad.
He's got a lot of experience on a team that that are per man 5 years older than on average than ours.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but obviously the experience that they've got, you don't get by being an average player. So I certainly think out of the 4 teams in the EIHL, I think they are probably my tip to finish at the bottom out of the 4 teams. But that being said, I'm intrigued to see them this season, in the sense of I'm intrigued to see how they fare over the long haul with, like I say, a new coach in his first season. Obviously, he knows the league and he knows the teams. He knows Belfast inside out. But obviously with the aging team as well. But yeah, I think the 3 in our conference are sort of interesting for different reasons.
Yeah, I think for me, Belfast are compared to the other 3 teams. It's like they've got an import left to sign, but they've got 5 senior Brits and only 1 under 23 Brit. However, the under 23 Brit is Jackson Whistle. And the 2 of the 5 senior Brits are Stephen Murphy and Andrew Dixon, who are netminders. So 3 of those 6 Brits are netminders. So they've only got 3 skating British players, which you add to the 14 imports, they've got 17 skaters. When you compare that to the likes of Panthers, Sheffield, Cardiff, who've got well over 20 in their squad, I think that's where they're going to struggle. They don't have the depth. And like with you say, they've got an ageing squad. If they pick up injuries, which is possible considering they have got so many players over the age of 30, that's going to hamper them.
Still a couple of weeks to go before the season starts, though. So, I mean, we pulled Polini out the bag. Don't think for a second that Belfast aren't aware of what's going on. As far as it goes, I'm very similar to you guys. I think our 4 teams in our conference look stacked. Sheffield, they just do it. They've got that winning mentality. It's Simsy keeps banging on about it. It's in their DNA. But that's how you want your club to have that DNA. You want your club to be a winner. Aim to win all the time. Cardiff have improved, and they've managed to do something that we couldn't do when we won the league. We basically lost the entirety of that team, and we had to rebuild. Whereas Cardiff have just sort of tweaked here and there and improved. Outside of our conference, I can't say I'm that impressed with Coventry. I think they look very average at the moment.
A lot of people seem to be building them up, though.
Yeah, I think it's basic because they're in that conference with the 2 newbies and Manchester. I think games in Manchester are going to be tough, and I think they're going to be quite entertaining. I can't see them getting many points on the road, though. Kind of like the old Cardiff Devils. Yeah. From the VOF days, when they were awesome in the tent, but then they were doggo when it came to the NIC. Well,
you look at Cardiff. They use the tent to their advantage, and that's what Manchester have got to do. They've got to use that building to their advantage, and it seems that Ryan Finity is recruiting a team that is going to do that.
Yeah. Guildford, quality netminder, couple of decent Brits, but the rest of it unknown. Milton Keynes I'm quite excited to see, and I'm quietly excited about Dundee with Patcher. Looks like he's building a squad similar to that one that he built at Hull that made the playoffs. If he can build a similar team to that, Edinburgh might not have a team at the start of the season if they experience the same visa problems that we've had with the Russian players. So they're probably at a disadvantage.
Funny you say that about Dundee, because of all the teams, they're the ones to me that I really have fears for, because they don't look to have a lot of experience games wise. They're quite young. They've got currently with their squad, they've got an average age of 24.5 years old. I fear
you still
for
can't
them.
old when you're 24.
You do when you're averaging 17 players, yes. But I mean, just from what I've pulled together for Dundee, 529 games of EIHL experience. Only Caps have got lower than that. 278 games of ECHL experience. Again, only Caps have got lower than that, but Caps have got lots of KHL experience. 1 AHL game, 58 SHL, 306 Allsvenskan, and that's it. You know, I just think I just really fear for them. I can't see
you look
anything.
at that whole team that Pacha had.
Yeah.
It was very similar.
Well, it depends what Pasha can do with him, and we all know what a passionate coach Omar Pasha is, and you know it's what he can do with them. But I must admit, and we can only go on what's on paper at the minute. I can't see them finishing any higher than 11th.
I think
possibly.
I think in a lot of ways, Capitals will be a very interesting team to watch as well. You know, given the makeup of the team is going to be very different to a lot of the ones in the league. It'd be interesting to see what they do, whether they, you know, how much if they do any better than previous years.
And Andy, who's looking weak on your part?
I agree with you, John. I'm not concerned. Well, I am concerned, I suppose, for Dundee, because, like you say, they just seem to be lacking in almost every area at the moment. And you know, there's still a little bit of time, and obviously, you've mentioned Pasha and stuff like that. But you know, I just think that, you know, experience goes. You know, you don't want. I mentioned Belfast being an aging team and that they've got fantastic experience and CVs and stuff, but you need a balance. But I think currently at the moment, I think Dundee are the polar opposite. And I think that is more worrying than having an aging team, is having a team that is so young, because it will be tough for them, because they won't have seen it all before, they won't have done it all before. You know, and they will have, you know, they won't have players that have been in, you know, and it's phasing out a little bit, I appreciate, but they're not going to have those grizzled veterans who've, you know, played in years gone by when it was a different game and it was a different time. You know, and I appreciate that, like I say, Bats these days is being phased out because of the way the game's gone. But if you know, if you're age 24, you probably haven't even watched it, let alone played in it. So it, you know, I agree with you, Jono, wholeheartedly. I think Dundee will have a really tough task on their hands, and I think if they get off to a bad start, I think you could see it sort of snowball and get progressively worse as the season goes on.
Okay, well, of course, the season less than a month away now, starting on the 9th of September. So we will see who makes a good start, and obviously we will be here twice a week, as was announced earlier today on Mr. Balm's excellent article on the Cat's Whiskers website. We will have our usual Monday review programme, and then Ask TCW on a Wednesday, so you can see all the changes that we've got planned for next season on there.
There is. Can I just going back to what we were talking about? Sorry, John. There is one, because when you originally sent the thing, right, you said who's dangerous, and Johnny, know I think is dangerous. John Armstrong.
That's why we've got 3 netminders.
one per period, yeah. And don't forget Zach Fitzgerald appears to have grown a set again. Now that somebody's left the country.
Well, I thought it's nice to see he's come out of hiding at last. But yes, with a lovely throat-slitting gesture to the Swedish bench on Saturday. Yeah, marvellous. It's going to be a fun season. I can see it coming there. All right, I think we've been prattling on for over an hour, so I think we shall leave it there. Just a reminder that 2 games at the NIC this week, pre-season. The Krefeld Penguins on Saturday, and then the Brayhead Clan in the Aladdin Cup on Sunday. So get down to them if you can.
Even Sunday is a must-win game, is it? Because we've only picked up 1 point.
Biggest game of the season.
No, the Sunday's game was not Aladdin Cup.
Oh, was it not? Oh,
no.
Well, we picked up points then, so it is a must-win game.
Yeah. I can. My hooks are on 10. They really are. And then, of course, after those games, we're into the Champions Hockey League at Mountfield on Thursday and then Burn on the Saturday. Those games will be covered on Premier Sports, as was announced last week. Further details on their website, premiersports.tv. Okay, we will leave it there for now. We will probably be back in a couple of weeks, probably reviewing those CHL games. But all that's left for me to say is thank you very much to Andy Haywood.
No worries at all, anytime.
Paul Balm.
Cheers.
And Antoine Marie-Jeanne.
Take care.
Thank you very much to you for listening as well. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. So until then, ta-ra.